What is the dumbest idea you have ever had that actually worked? In university, I was late on an assignment that was supposed to be in my TA's Dropbox by noon that day. I didn't manage to get there until almost 3, so I was sure he had already emptied it. Now, the drop boxes were literal boxes in cubbies with a slot on the front and a lock on them that prevented them from being pulled out. The rack holding them was just a basic metal frame with about 5 rows of boxes. My TA's box was somewhere in the middle of the shelf. So I figured, I'm late anyways, why not take a chance? And slipped my assignment into the box below my TA's box. I got my assignment handed back a few weeks later than everyone else, and it had a note from another TA. Scribbled on it that said, "Looks like this fell into my box by mistake." I got full marks on the assignment. That's genius. The trick is to make the professor reasonably believe that it was their own error. Or some genuine accident or circumstance beyond the student's control. I used to send in papers late via "I made an error in the email" file. By crafting fake corrupted files. Or realistic FWDs of a previous, pre-due date email containing my paper in which I had accidentally made a typo in their email address. In college, my buddy and I took an investing class, and for one of the projects we had a month to invest fake dollars into the stock market and see which team would have the most money after a month. It was spring semester, so we put all of our fake money into Heinz, thinking there would be a spike in ketchup and mustard sales as the weather got warmer. The next day, Berkshire Hathaway purchased the entire Heinz company, and the professor accused us of insider trading. We had no idea what we were doing. Edit, "Hey you, Mandog Jr. were famous." Edit 2, to clarify. We didn't actually get in trouble for insider trading, but the professor came over to us before the next class and was like, "What happened here?" We explained it, and she thought it was funny but said we would definitely be investigated for insider trading if this was real money. Similar game. 1987. I was absent the day we were supposed to buy stocks. The crash happened later that week. And since I was in cash and everyone else purchased stock and lost a ton of fake dollars, I won. I once faked being sick when I was in middle school and told my mom I had a sore throat and felt a cold coming on. She took me to the doctor, and it turned out that I did, in fact, have strep throat. Lol. Task failed successfully. Maybe the doctor was being a total bro. In college, I was taking a class that required me to purchase an online textbook and workbook that was registered under your name, basically ensuring that each student would have to buy a new online copy each semester instead of buying used textbooks. I had a friend who took this class a semester before me, so we came up with the idea to message customer service and explain that I had recently gotten married, so my last name had changed, and I legally changed my first name from my friend's first name to my first name, and I would need them to change it in their system. It totally worked, and the rep even congratulated me on my marriage. I think it's nearly criminal to enforce students to buy new books instead of used ones, especially when it's the professor's own textbook. Back in high school, I stopped by one of my teacher's rooms after class to ask him some questions about our homework. When I walked in, I noticed he was grading some of our tests. Of note, all of his tests were made up of multiple choice, true, false, or matching, and all of the answers were bubbled in. What I noticed was that instead of using an answer key to grade, he was just placing a stencil over the paper with the correct bubble punched out. The stencil wasn't transparent, so all it showed was whether we bubbled in the right answer or not. Flash forward to our next test, and I'm stuck on a T-F question. Knowing how he graded, I figured I'd bubble in both T and F. And if he caught it, it would be easy enough to claim it was an accident. Well, he didn't catch it, and I used that trick the rest of the year for a little extra boost on all of his tests. You just scared me, because that's exactly how the one food handler certification test I took was graded. I stuck my neck out for an ex-con on house arrest at my job. He interviewed well, but his availability was horrible between the ankle bracelet and meeting with his PO, drug treatment program, etc. My GM said no, and I said I'm doing it anyway. The first night he worked there, I found myself in a bind. He was the only person scheduled in the kitchen from 8 to 10 p. And I had no one who knew the kitchen besides myself. Because our store had a wicked virus traveling around. I told him, "Look, dude, We're pretty ducked back here. And I'm going to try to keep my cool, but I can't promise. And because I'm the only manager on duty, I might have to run to the front drive-thru. Well, this guy mastered production in about an hour. He was faster than my GM on the grills and fryers. And his attitude was so good. I waited on nothing, and he even tried to help me make sandwiches and send them out. He also managed to clean up the entire kitchen. He eventually moved to maintenance and fixed all the crap the previous guy ignored in a day. Then he moved to service for more hours when the hour restrictions came off, and was great with the Karens. My GM got over the ankle bracelet, record, and tattoos, and actually hired him for his house flipping business. All because I said, we need ducking employees. And you can't be picky when he's the only guy I've interviewed in a month. Edit. Thanks for the awards. But in the future, consider spending on rehabilitation programs in your area. Some people wondered why I consider this a dumb decision. Our background check wasn't exhaustive in detail to us. It said red, yellow, green, and we usually tossed all the red ones in favor of green or yellow. I had no clue going into the interview, or the hire, what his offenses were. He chose to disclose to me why his availability sucked. I did not ask. I don't know the legality of asking. But he didn't disclose his record to me. And I had to go with my gut. In fast food you get a lot of teenagers as customers and employees. You get a lot of skeezy people. Record or not, you have to consider the safety of the children as well as the quality of the worker you are introducing to the workplace. An ex-con is a wild card when you don't know exactly what they were in for. And again, I'm not sure the legality of me asking. After I got to know him on a personal level, he shared his record. Drug abuse led to a bunch of felonies. And he was released early on house arrest for good behavior. But again, I knew none of this as I hired. He was a great hire. He is a great man. He was the kids' defender when people chose to berate my teenager cashiers. He was a great influence on the kids. A real do as I say and not as I did kinda guy who was painfully honest about what he lost to Drew Gus. But he also could have been a real angry man who enjoyed fighting people and stealing. I used to know a guy who, every week, would order his Saturday night curry for delivery while sitting in the pub and then walk over the road to the curry house and get it and himself delivered home. This went on for about 10 to 12 weeks. One week, we were sitting having a pint and the owner of the curry house walked in, took his order, and had him picked up from the pub. He said it was easier for everyone concerned. That's the most British thing I've ever read. On 4th of July I was in Brooklyn in neighborhood not too far from my own. I was having a hell of a time catching a cab when suddenly an ice cream truck pulled up. My apartment was right next to an ice cream truck depot. I knew any truck in the area was parking there. So I asked for a ride in what little Spanglish I knew. They obliged. Free ride home plus ice cream cone. Big win. Awkward ride. I am glad they said yes. Just smile and keep saying gracias. Lol. At college was at a friend's house on the other side of town. Was very late and the buses had stopped, so my only way home was to call a cab. This was before Uber. I was also really hungry, so because I only had about $10. My choice was either get some takeout and walk for an hour to get home at night, or call a cab and go hungry. Then eureka! I went into the Chinese takeout place and asked for a delivery to my home address and asked for a ride home. They protested at first, but I explained that me hitching a ride was no extra cost for them. They agreed and I got a free ride home and a Chinese takeout. Edit. Added a few words to explain I only had enough dollar for either the takeaway or the taxi. Edit 2. Thank you kind sir for the gold. Edit 3. As many of you guessed, this was a long time ago. About 17 years ago in fact. The delivery guy had some other deliveries in the car, so he didn't go out just for me. And yes, I tipped the guy, but had to run into my apartment first to get a handful of quarters. I used a soap bottle as a makeshift sink plunger. And this worked? I'm impressed. Bobcat tire blew during a job. Had another tire, but no jack. Positioned the Bobcat behind a dump truck. Bobcat then tries to lift the end of the dump truck. Dump truck hella heavy. Bobcat lifted itself instead. Tire changed and back to work. That sounds like a good way to end up crushed by a skid steer. breaking into my own house through the kitchen window using a piece of wire and a wooden table after I was locked out. I want to hear how the duck you did this. Well, I arrived home with my mom and my little cousin and we realized we forgot the keys at my grandma's house. Way the hell across the city. Mom calls my dad to bring his keys. He was working at the time and he'd take an hour to arrive. So we'd have to wait outside. I went full hell no mode and kept looking for other ways in. Turned out that one of the tiny back windows was open. But there was a safety pin that kept it from opening all the way up and the only way to remove it was unscrewing it. So I grabbed a wooden clothespin that was lying there. Broke it. Removed the wire that kept it together because it was just the right size to unscrew the window pin. I did it. Pulled a table underneath the window so I could climb inside and just like that I managed to successfully break into a house at age 13. Bet my husband I could fix the dent in the car with a plunger. It worked. Edit, it is clear I should have used a massive suction dildo instead. Till. I got rear-ended one time. Right around Christmas. And had a dent in my back bumper. That summer I had enough spare money to go get it fixed. But when I looked at the bumper there was no dent. As the weather got hotter, it caused the bumper to expand and eventually it popped back into place. Put Jesus in as Wi-Fi password in church. It worked. Far from the dumbest working idea in the thread. But I once got an extra day to work on a video project in high school by coming to class with a video that was just a quarter second of blackness. Eagerly volunteering to go first. Then acting confused and scared when the file didn't work. The teacher took pity on me and told me to just bring it the following day. And I got to finish it that evening and still got full credit as if I did it on time. I once completely blanked on an essay assignment and didn't realize till I was sitting in class. Luckily, the teacher didn't collect the essays till the end of class and I proceeded to write the whole paper in my notebook during lecture. When people were handing in essays I went up and told the teacher that I forgot to print it. But I had a version in my email. Showing him the handwritten one to prove I had completed the assignment. He let me go print it and I typed the whole thing up in like 5 minutes. Ran back. Handed it in and got like a C or B. Couldn't argue that since I was about to get a 0. Not my idea but my mom's. I dropped one of my earrings and couldn't find it so she threw my other earring on the floor and it happened to land next to the first one. Brother. Go find your brother. Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I did an undergrad in some weird mashup of electrical, computer engineering, math, physics and comp sci. Had to do a project or thesis at the end. I couldn't write for sheet. So opted for the project. Except, I couldn't actually do anything good for sheet. So I invented *** the 9-bit byte ***. Took me all of 5 minutes to think up. ** normal read all computers are based on binary. Bytes are 8 binary bits. And blah blah. Well, I had the courage to ask why they couldn't be 9 bits. It's really more complicated than that. But you'll see I didn't care for complication if you read on. * instead of learning sheet like 0001001 binary equals 9 decimal. Why not just say 100 million, the one is 9 spaces over equals 9 decimal. Then, humans could read it. This is perverting everything about binary and architectures based on it. But whatever. Who cares if saying 28 decimal equals 11,100 in binary or 00000100100100000 in my scheme and was incredibly wasteful. And I went on to build a CPU that could process them that was ridiculously stupid. Wrote my small paper about it. Professor commended me for thinking outside the box and gave me a great mark but told me to never tell anyone else about this stupid idea. So of course now I'm telling everything here. I am a poor student living in Germany. Students are required by law to have health insurance. The university will expel you if you don't have health insurance. The lowest rate I could get was about €189, $208 a month. I usually don't even spend that much on food. There was just no way that I could pay such a high rate. I wrote my insurer countless letters and emails explaining how there was no way that I could pay €189. They refused to lower my rate, explaining how they are just following the law. They even informed my university that I had failed to pay health insurance. The university then threatened me to exmatriculate me. In my desperation, I wrote the German Ministry of Health. I explained myself and asked them to talk to my insurer. A week later I received a letter from my insurer informing me that they had cut my rate to a mere €89 a month and that this reduction was applicable to all month prior. My rate is about to go up again, but this time I should be able to manage. Edit, I got my high school degree by attending evening seminars when I was in my mid-20s. I worked a number of years after I received my high school degree. I started university when I turned 30. Therefore, I am not eligible for student rates or government loans (BAföG). Most students in Germany pay a significantly lower rate. Wow, you got insanely lucky. Good job reaching out to someone so high up. It probably wouldn't work in this day and age, but back when I was young I was tired of retail and wanted an office job. I just lied my ass off and pulled a total George Costanza what with friends coached to answer their phones as a business and such. Got hired as an admin assistant and been steadily moving up since. We had a noisy rotating rooster weather vane, loud enough to keep people awake on windy nights. Despite having been lubed. So I filled the hole the rooster rotates in with Crisco. Even though people said it was a dumb idea and wouldn't work. Never had to lube it again because the Crisco didn't break down like other lubes. Back in the flip phone days. I had dropped mine and the screen stopped working. I could make and receive calls. But the screen was just completely blank. I put up with it for a couple of weeks because I couldn't afford a new phone. But one day I had the thought of, well, if dropping the phone made the connection loose, maybe the same thing can fix it, and threw my phone at the ground. I picked it back up and the screen was working. Edit, thanks for making this my top comment of all time. Guys. Now everyone knows how much of an idiot I am. When I was brand new to the army, we were training with another unit and we had to defend the urban combat area, Mount Site, from an incoming force. We were only allowed a few hours to prepare. One guy suggested that we set up trip wires to, at least, slow them down. The doors are all painted bright blue. And all anyone had was my package of black 550 cord parachute cord that could easily be seen. Setting this up, we thought there was no way they would miss it. I was wrong. Instead of checking the door, like they were supposed to, the opposing force simply tried to rush through. I almost couldn't return fire due to the fact I was laughing so hard. I even put a piece, just below knee level, in the doorway to the room I was in. I turned around when I heard people falling over each other. I looked and almost the entire squad was crawling on top of each other trying to get up. I put my weapon on burst and emptied the magazine. Then fumbled with my last one as I started to laugh even harder than before. After I blindly fired down the hallway, I just leaned against the wall and the entire group and myself just looked at the scene and started laughing. Then their platoon leader came running in and tripped over the same cord. At this point I was done. Put my weapon on safe. Put it against the wall. And tried not to piss my pants over the whole situation.